The voicemail came at 3:47 a.m., pulling me from a dreamless sleep. My mother's voice, raspy and desperate, filled my dark bedroom. "Lila, honey, I know it's been years, but I need your help. Things aren't what they seem.
Please call me back.
It's about the house, your father's house. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." I played it 3 more times, each replay making my hands shake harder. 5 years of silence, broken by a middle-of-the-night plea. Classic Serafina, treating time zones and boundaries like gentle suggestions. My apartment felt suddenly small, the walls pressing in. I got up, paced to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The city lights flickered through my window, casting shadows that reminded me of childhood nights spent waiting for her to come home. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. "I know you're awake. Please." I set the glass down too hard, water sloshing onto the counter. "Damn it," I muttered, grabbing a dish towel. As I wiped up the spill, my eyes drifted to the only family photo I kept, Dad and me at my college graduation, his proud smile frozen in time. He'd been gone 2 years by then, but I'd insisted on displaying his picture at the ceremony. Serafina hadn't shown up. Another buzz. "Lila, I'm scared." My laugh came out harsh. "Sure you are," I said to the empty room. But something in her voice during that voicemail, a tremor I'd never heard before, nagged at me. The house she mentioned was supposed to be mine. Dad's will had been clear about that. But somehow, in the chaos after his death, while I was drowning in grief and final exams, the paperwork had gotten complicated. Serafina's specialty. I picked up my phone, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. Before I could talk myself out of it, I typed, "It's 4 a.m. Some of us work for a living." Her response was immediate. "Meet me tomorrow? The cafe on Brunswick Street, 1 p.m.
Please.
There are things you need to know about your father." My chest tightened. She knew exactly which buttons to push. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, wanted to block her number, and go back to the life I'd built without her. Instead, I found myself typing, "Fine. 1 hour. Thank you, sweetheart. You won't regret this." But I already did. I walked to my bedroom window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Below, a man walked his dog through the empty streets, their shadows stretching long under the streetlights. Normal people doing normal things, while my carefully constructed world started to crack. My phone lit up with one final message. "Don't tell anyone you're meeting me, especially not Dorian." I frowned. The name meant nothing to me, but the warning sent a chill down my spine. 5 years was a long time. Who else had inserted themselves into my mother's web while I'd been gone?
Sleep was impossible now.
I curled up in my reading chair, wrapped in the quilt my grandmother had made before she passed. Tomorrow, I'd face Serafina across a cafe table, armed with 5 years of therapy and boundaries. I'd listen to whatever story she'd crafted, nod politely, and walk away.
Simple.
But as the sun began to rise, painting my walls in shades of pink and gold, a voice that sounded suspiciously like my father's whispered, "Nothing with Serafina is ever simple."
I had no idea how right that voice would be.
Brunswick Street Cafe hadn't changed in 5 years. Same rustic wooden tables, same oversized windows, same barista with the sleeve tattoos. But Serafina had changed. A lot. She sat at a corner table, perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around a ceramic mug, wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was shorter, blonder, and when she smiled, I noticed the subtle work she'd had done around her eyes. Money had always looked good on my mother. "Darling," she said, rising to embrace me. I stepped back, choosing the chair opposite her. "You look." She paused, studying me. "Tired. Middle of the night phone calls will do that." I ordered black coffee when the waitress came by, ignoring Serafina's slight frown at my choice. "I've missed you," she said, reaching across the table. I moved my hands to my lap. "And I know I have no right to ask for your help. But then don't." The coffee arrived, and I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, anchoring myself. "Why am I here, Serafina?" She glanced over her shoulder before leaning forward. "Your father's house. The one he left you. There's something there I need to retrieve. Something important. The house you somehow managed to sell out from under me? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. While I was writing my thesis and planning his funeral, it wasn't like that. Her perfectly lined lips trembled. There were complications with the estate. Bills to pay. You were so young, so focused on your studies. I was 23. A young man approached our table, and Serafina's entire demeanor shifted. Her spine straightened, her smile brightened, and something that looked almost like fear flickered across her face. "There you are," he said, resting his hand on her shoulder. He couldn't have been more than 35, with a kind of carefully cultivated stubble that screamed, "Trust fund." "You must be Lila."
I'm Dorian. Ah,
The mysterious Dorian from the text. I nodded, but didn't offer my hand. "Your mother talks about you constantly," he said, pulling up a chair. "All good things. Funny, since we haven't spoken since Dad's funeral." Serafina's laugh was too bright, too sharp. "Darling, you know how time gets away from us. Dorian and I are getting married next month. We'd love for you to be there." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "Married? It's going to be quite the event," Dorian said, his hand moving to the back of Serafina's neck. She leaned into his touch, but her shoulders remained tense. "Your mother deserves the very best. She usually gets it," I muttered. "One way or another." Serafina's smile cracked slightly. "Darling, about the house. I should go." I stood up, throwing a few bills on the table. This was a mistake. "Wait." Serafina grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "There are things you don't understand. About your father, about why I had to." She glanced at Dorian, who was watching our exchange with unsettling intensity.
please.
"Just meet me tomorrow alone. I'll explain everything." I looked down at her hand on my wrist, at the massive engagement ring catching the light. "You know what I don't understand? Why you'd call me at 4 in the morning, scared out of your mind, only to sit here playing happy families with your boy toy fiancé." Dorian's smile didn't waver, but something cold crept into his eyes. Serafina's fingers tightened painfully before releasing me. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "The old boathouse.
Noon.
Please, Lila. For your father's sake." I walked out without looking back, but I could feel their eyes on me. Outside, the spring air had turned chilly. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos I'd taken of Dad's 5 years ago. The house should have been mine. And whatever Serafina was looking for, whatever had her spooked enough to reach out after all this time, I was going to find it first. I broke into my own house at midnight. The irony wasn't lost on me as I jimmied open the kitchen window, the same one that never quite latched properly when Dad was alive. The new owners had never fixed it. The house smelled different, lavender and synthetic pine instead of Dad's coffee and old books. I clicked on my phone's flashlight, sweeping it across the renovated kitchen. Marble countertops had replaced our worn formica. The walls, once covered in my childhood height measurements, were now a sterile white. Something crashed upstairs. I froze, heart pounding, until I recognized the sound of the heating system kicking in. The owners were away. I'd watched their loaded SUV pull out this morning, vacation luggage strapped to the roof. Dad's study was now a home gym, treadmill squatting where his desk used to be. I ran my fingers along the baseboards, searching for the loose piece he'd shown me years ago. "Every house needs its secrets, Lilabug," he'd said, winking as he slid documents behind the wood panel. The baseboard came loose easily. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a stack of letters. My hands trembled as I pulled them out. "Dear Lila," the first one began. "If you're reading this, something's gone wrong. Your mother." Headlights swept across the window. I ducked, heart racing. A car door slammed. The kitchen windows open. Dorian's voice carried clearly through the night air. "Just like you said it would be." She always was predictable. Serafina's laugh was brittle. "Check upstairs. I'll take the main floor." I stuffed the letters into my jacket and looked frantically around the room. The window was too small. The closet too obvious. Footsteps approached the study door. "Lila." Serafina's voice was sing-song. Darling, I know you're here. Let's talk about those letters. The door handle turned. I pressed myself behind the treadmill, praying the shadows would hide me. Serafina's silhouette filled the doorway. You know, she said, stepping into the room, your father always thought he was so clever with his little hiding spots. But he told me everything that last night, when the morphine made him chatty. My nails dug into my palms. Dad had been clear-headed until the end. I'd been there. She hadn't. Found anything upstairs? She called out. Not yet, Dorian responded. But the master bedroom's interesting. Lots of hiding places. Serafina moved to the baseboards, fingers tracing the edge I'd disturbed. Oh, Lila, did you really think I'd let you find them first? Those letters could ruin everything. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around to find Dorian blocking the doorway, his smile predatory. Got her, he said. I lunged for the gap between them, but Serafina was faster than she looked. Her hand clamped around my arm, nails digging in. The letters, she demanded.
Now.
Go to hell. I twisted free, backing away. Dad told me everything was supposed to be mine. The house, the trust fund. Your father was a foolish man who made foolish choices. She stepped closer. Just like you're making now. Dorian, check her pockets. Don't touch me, I snarled, but he was already moving forward. A new voice cut through the tension. Mom? What's going on? We all turned. A teenage boy stood in the hallway, confusion etched on his face. He looked so much like Dad it hurt. Jackson, Serafina breathed. You're supposed to be at Kevin's house. I forgot my charger. His eyes locked with mine. Who's she? Nobody, Serafina said quickly. Just a burglar. Dorian's handling it. I'm your sister, I said, watching color drain from Serafina's face. And our mother has been lying to both of us for a very long time. The letters crinkled in my jacket pocket, and I knew the real war was just beginning. The letters lay spread across my kitchen table like a map of betrayal. Jackson sat across from me, his hands shaking as he read our father's words. He knew, Jackson whispered. He knew what she was planning even before he died. I pushed a cup of tea toward him. At 18, he looked so young, yet his eyes held the same weary knowledge I'd gained at his age. Dad tried to protect us both. By hiding letters in the walls? He picked up the one dated 3 days before Dad's death. Why didn't he just tell someone? The front door buzzed. Through the intercom, Serafina's voice crackled. Jackson, darling, I know you're up there.
Come home.
We can discuss this as a family. Jackson flinched. I moved to the window, peering down at the street. Serafina stood alone, but a black SUV idled nearby, Dorian visible behind the wheel. You don't have to go with her, I said. She'll call the police. His laugh was hollow. Report you for kidnapping or something. She's good at making things look the way she wants them to. The buzzer sounded again, more insistent. I have proof now, I said, gathering the letters. These show how she forged Dad's signature, how she. Those letters won't help. A new voice made us both jump. Dorian stood in my doorway, the lockpick in his hand glinting. Your mother's very thorough about covering her tracks. I stepped between him and Jackson. Get out. Can't do that. He closed the door behind him. But I can offer you both a deal. Whatever she's paying you, I started. This isn't about money. He pulled out his phone, showing us a video. My father in his hospital bed, clearly drugged, mumbling something about changing his will. Your mother's quite the actress, isn't she? The grieving wife, helping her confused husband make his final wishes clear. Bile rose in my throat. You helped her stage this. Actually, no. This was before my time. But I've helped her with other projects since then. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The question is, what are you willing to do to keep this video private? Jackson stood up. You're blackmailing us? I prefer to think of it as negotiating. The wedding's in 3 weeks. Attend, play happy family, sign some papers renouncing any claims to the estate, and this video never sees the light of day. The buzzer rang again. I looked at Jackson, saw my own fury reflected in his face. And if we refuse? I asked. Then this video goes public, along with evidence suggesting you both conspired to challenge the will fraudulently. Your mother's reputation stays intact, the loving parent protecting her husband's true wishes from his greedy children. My phone vibrated. A text from Serafina. Make the right choice, darling. For once. She planned this, Jackson said quietly. All of it. The late-night call, the meeting at the cafe, letting me catch you at the house. She wanted us to find the letters. So we'd know exactly what we stood to lose, I finished. Dorian checked his watch. Tick-tock. What's it going to be? I looked at the letters on my table, at my father's desperate warnings. Then at Jackson, who had Dad's eyes and too much of his trust. We'll be at the wedding, I said. Dorian's smile widened. Smart girl. I'll let her know. After he left, Jackson turned to me. You're not really giving up, are you? I picked up Dad's last letter, dated the day he died. The one I hadn't shown Dorian. The one that mentioned a safety deposit box and a key hidden where only my Lilabug would think to look. No, I said. I'm just buying us time. Only my Lilabug would think to look. Dad's words echoed in my head as I stood in the cemetery, staring at his headstone. Jackson shifted nervously beside me. This feels wrong, he whispered. So does everything else lately. I knelt in the wet grass, running my fingers along the base of the granite marker. Dad and I had played treasure hunt games throughout my childhood, elaborate puzzles with clues hidden in plain sight. This had to be his final game. Someone's coming, Jackson hissed. I kept searching, my fingers finding a slight irregularity in the stone. Keep watch. Paying respects to your father? Serafina's voice cut through the morning mist. I jerked my hand back, but not before feeling something shift beneath my fingers. What are you doing here? I stood, positioning myself between her and the headstone. Can a woman visit her husband's grave? She laid a pristine white rose against the stone. Though I suspect your visit isn't purely sentimental. Jackson stepped closer to me. Mom, please. Quiet, darling. Her smile was razor-sharp. The adults are talking. Did you tell your sister about the trust fund? The one that kicks in on your 18th birthday next month. My head snapped toward Jackson. He wouldn't meet my eyes.
Oh.
Serafina's laugh was soft. She didn't know? Everett set it up before he died. Quite substantial, really. Of course, accessing it requires certain conditions to be met. Like attending your wedding, the pieces clicked into place. That's why you needed us both there. Some legal requirement. Smart girl. Always were. Like your father. She brushed invisible dirt from her sleeve. The trust requires both children to be present for any major distributions. Everett's little insurance policy, I suppose. Keeping the family together. You're not family, I spat. You're a con artist who married our father. Careful, darling. Dorian's quite protective of my reputation. It would be a shame if that video found its way to the police. Jackson's voice shook. I don't want the money. Don't be foolish. Serafina's mask slipped for a moment, something desperate flashing in her eyes. You have no idea what I've done to secure your future. Both of you. What you've done. I stepped forward. You mean like drugging Dad in the hospital? Forging documents? Or maybe, like, keeping your father's secrets? Her words stopped me cold. Ask yourself why he needed those elaborate hiding places, Lila. Why a respected professor had offshore accounts and coded messages. Your father wasn't the saint you remember. You're lying. Am I? Check the safety deposit box. If you can find the key. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and darling? The groundskeeper starts his rounds in 5 minutes. I'd hate for him to catch you, disturbing a grave. After she left, I dropped back to my knees, fingers finding the loose section again. A small key slid into my palm. Lila. Jackson's voice was small. I'm sorry about the trust fund. I should have told you. It doesn't matter. But it did. Every new revelation felt like another crack in the foundation of what I thought I knew. We need to find that safety deposit box. What if she's right about Dad? I closed my fingers around the key until it bit into my palm. Then we deal with it together. But as we hurried from the cemetery, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were playing right into Serafina's hands. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered, "What if revenge isn't what you're really after?" The answer, I feared, was waiting in whatever that key would unlock. The safety deposit box held one item, a USB drive labeled insurance. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop, Jackson hovering behind me in my apartment. Video files filled the screen. Dozens of them, dated throughout my father's final year. I clicked the first one. Dad appeared, looking healthier than in my last memories. If you're watching this, Lila, I failed to protect you both. The money in the Cayman accounts, it wasn't mine. I was helping people hide their assets, laundering it through the university. Serafina found out. "Turn it off," Jackson whispered. I couldn't. Dad's voice continued. "She threatened to expose everything unless I changed my will. But the trust fund, that's clean money. My insurance policy for you and Jackson. As long as you're both present at major family events, she can't touch it." The next video showed Dad arguing with Serafina in his study. She held up papers, screaming about betrayal. He looked defeated, already sick. My phone buzzed. A text from Dorian. "Wedding starts in an hour. Don't be late." I closed the laptop. "We can't go." "We have to." Jackson paced the room. "If we don't show up, she wins everything. She already has." I grabbed Dad's letters from my desk. She manipulated him, blackmailed him. And he wasn't innocent either. Jackson's words cut deep. "Face it, Lila. There are no heroes here."
The doorbell rang.
Through the peephole, I saw Dorian in his wedding tuxedo. "I know you're in there," he called. "And I know what was in the safety deposit box." I opened the door a crack.
How?
His smile was cold. "Because I'm the one who helped your father set up those Cayman accounts. Before Serafina. Before any of this." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "What?"
Get dressed.
"Both of you. The car's waiting." He held up his phone, showing a familiar video. Dad in his hospital bed. "Would be a shame if this went public. Think of the scandal. The university would probably revoke your degree, given the circumstances." 20 minutes later, we sat in the back of his car, me in the bridesmaid's dress Serafina had sent weeks ago, Jackson in a suit that matched Dorian's. "Why are you doing this?" I asked as we pulled up to the church. "Because your mother isn't the only one who needs that trust fund activated." Dorian adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror. "Family events, remember? Like a wedding. Or a funeral." The threat hung in the air as we walked into the church. Serafina stood at the altar in white, beaming at the gathered guests. When she saw us, her smile faltered slightly. "Places, everyone," the wedding planner chirped, ushering us forward. I felt the weight of Dad's letters in my clutch. Useless now. The USB drive in my pocket might as well have been a stone, dragging me down. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered had only revealed more lies, more corruption. "It's not too late," Jackson whispered as we took our seats. "We could still expose everything." But looking at the guests, colleagues from the university, family, friends, people who had known and respected Dad, I realized the truth. Exposing Serafina meant destroying Dad's legacy, tainting every good memory anyone had of him. The wedding march began to play. Serafina floated down the aisle, triumphant. Dorian waited at the altar, watching me instead of his bride, his message clear: play along or else. I'd started this journey seeking justice. Now, sitting beside my half-brother in a church full of lies, I realized justice might cost more than I was willing to pay. The minister spoke. "If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage." I kept my mouth shut and felt the last piece of my father's legacy crumble to dust. The reception hall sparkled with champagne flutes and fake smiles. I watched Serafina and Dorian work the room, a perfect couple built on perfectly crafted lies. Beside me, Jackson fidgeted with his phone. "Got it," he whispered, showing me the screen. The video from Dad's USB drive, ready to stream to the giant display screens flanking the dance floor. One click would expose everything. "Wait." I grabbed his wrist. Through the crowd, I caught Serafina watching us, her champagne glass trembling slightly. Look at her. She's expecting something. Of course she is. Dorian appeared behind us, smooth as silk. Your mother's been waiting for this moment since she married your father. Haven't you figured it out yet? The pieces clicked together. The trust fund, the video, this whole wedding. I turned to face him. It was all her plan. Smart girl. He nodded toward Serafina. She needed you both here, angry enough to expose everything. Because once the truth about your father goes public, the trust fund gets invalidated, Jackson finished. Because it was built on illegal money. And who gets everything then? I asked. Dorian's smile widened. The grieving widow, of course, who never knew about her husband's illegal activities, who only wanted to protect her children from scandal. The microphone squealed as Serafina stepped up to make her speech. Her eyes were wet with tears that looked almost real. My darling children, she began. I know these past years haven't been easy. I felt the weight of the USB drive in my pocket, Dad's final message burning a hole in my chest. Across the room, university colleagues dabbed their eyes, touched by the performance. Do it, Dorian whispered. Show everyone who your father really was. That's what you came for, isn't it? Revenge. Jackson's finger hovered over his phone. One click. But I was watching Serafina, the slight tremor in her hands, the way her eyes kept darting to the exits. This wasn't triumph, it was terror. No, I said, pulling Jackson's phone down. That's what she came for. I walked to the microphone, ignoring Dorian's attempt to grab my arm. Serafina's speech faltered. Mom, I said, the word feeling strange on my tongue. Show them the prenup. Her face went white. Behind her, Dorian froze. The one Dad made you sign, I continued. The one that says if you ever remarry, everything goes to your children, not your new husband. Dorian's mask cracked. What prenup? The one in the safety deposit box. I lied, watching Serafina's expression, along with Dad's real videos. The ones showing who really set up those offshore accounts. Serafina's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Dorian grabbed her arm. Is this true? She looked between us, her carefully constructed world crumbling. Dorian, please. You said the money was clean, he hissed. You promised me. The money was never the point. I cut in. Was it, Mom? You just wanted us here. Together. Like Dad's trust fund required. Tears spilled down her cheeks, real ones this time. I didn't know how else to get you back. Jackson stepped forward. You could have just asked. The room had gone silent, guests watching the drama unfold. Dorian backed away from Serafina, already calculating his escape. The wedding's off, he announced, heading for the door. Good luck explaining this to your lawyers. I watched my mother sink into a chair, decades of manipulation collapsing around her. She looked smaller somehow, more human. What now? Jackson asked quietly. I thought about Dad's real message on the USB drive. The greatest revenge is living well, Lilabug. Don't let the past poison your future. Now, I said, taking Jackson's hand, we start over. All of us. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was something closer to peace. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I stood in front of Dad's house again. The new owners had moved out, unable to handle the constant repairs. The place looked tired, waiting. Are you sure about this? Jackson asked, holding up the keys we'd gotten from the realtor. I nodded. The trust fund had finally activated on his 18th birthday, giving us both the means to buy back what was taken. But that wasn't why we were here. Serafina sat in her car across the street, watching. She'd been sober for 3 months now, attending therapy twice a week. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. She doesn't have to stay in the car, Jackson said quietly. I know. Inside, the house smelled of dust and possibility. We found Serafina's white rose still lying on the kitchen counter, dried and brittle. I picked it up, remembering another rose on Dad's grave. I found something else in the safety deposit box, I said, pulling out a faded envelope. Dad's last letter to you. Serafina's heels clicked on the walkway outside. She'd made her choice. Come in, I called before she could knock. She entered cautiously, her designer clothes replaced by something simpler. Her hands trembled slightly as she took in the familiar walls. "The night your father died," she said, "he asked me to promise him something. To keep our family together no matter what." Her laugh was soft, broken. I managed to do exactly the opposite. I held out the envelope. "He wrote this the day before.
For you."
She stared at it like it might bite. "I don't deserve." "Probably not," Jackson cut in. "But he wanted you to have it." The letter was short. I'd memorized it during sleepless nights, wondering if I was making the right choice. "My dearest adversary, the money was never real. The offshore accounts, the trust fund conditions, all smoke and mirrors. I knew you'd try to control everything after I was gone, so I gave you something to chase. The real inheritance was always simpler. Our children. Love them better than you loved me. They're stronger than both of us."
E.
Serafina sank into a kitchen chair, the letter shaking in her hands. "All this time. We're selling the house," I said. "Too many ghosts. But we're keeping Dad's study furniture, splitting it between our places." "Places?" She looked up sharply. "I bought a condo," Jackson said. "Near campus. And Lila's new apartment has a spare room. For guests," I added. "Family. If they're willing to try." Understanding dawned in her eyes. Not forgiveness. We weren't there yet. But an invitation. A chance. "Your father," she whispered, "would be proud of you both." "We know," I said and meant it. Later, after she left, Jackson and I sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset paint the neighborhood gold. The same view Dad and I had shared so many times, talking about everything and nothing. "Think she'll actually change?" he asked. I thought about the steel beneath Serafina's vulnerability, the strength it took to face your own demons. "I think she already is. The question is, are we ready to change too?" He leaned against my shoulder, so much like Dad it made my heart ache. Maybe that's what he wanted all along. Not revenge or justice, just growth. A text lit on my phone. "Dinner next Sunday? I'll cook. Mom." The old me would have deleted it instantly. The new me typed, "We'll bring dessert." Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in exposing the truth or claiming justice. Sometimes it's in choosing to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. Dad knew that all along. I looked at our childhood home one last time, seeing not what was taken, but what remained. 2 siblings, a mother trying to change, and endless possibilities ahead. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was ours. The note fell from Ethan's jacket pocket as I was gathering laundry. A small square of cream-colored paper that didn't belong among the receipts and business cards. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it, revealing elegant handwriting I didn't recognize. "Same time tomorrow. Our spot. C." I stood frozen in our walk-in closet, surrounded by the familiar scent of Ethan's cologne and pressed shirts. The morning light streaming through our bedroom windows suddenly felt harsh, exposing. 3 simple sentences had transformed our carefully ordered world into something uncertain and threatening. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. "Mom, forgot my calc book. Can you bring it to school?" I tucked the note into my pocket and grabbed my keys. The drive to Tessa's high school gave me time to think, to replay the subtle changes in Ethan's behavior over the past few months. The late meetings. The weekend conferences. The new cologne. Tessa was waiting by the school entrance, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing one of Ethan's old college sweatshirts. "You're a lifesaver," she said, reaching for the textbook. "Dad's taking me shopping after school. Wanna come? I have patience until 6. I forced a smile, noting how easily she mentioned these father-daughter outings that had become more frequent lately. "Maybe next time." "Whatever." She shrugged, already turning away. "Oh, hey, don't wait up tonight. We might grab dinner too." I watched her disappear into the crowd of students, remembering when she used to tell me everything. Now she's saved her secrets for Ethan, and I wondered how many of his she kept in return. Back at my dermatology practice, I struggled to focus on patient consultations. Between appointments, I found myself staring at my phone, thumb hovering over a contact I hadn't called in years. Nolan Pierce.
Dr.
Mercer? My assistant's voice startled me. Your 2 o'clock is ready. I put my phone away, but the thought of Nolan, now a private investigator, lingered. We'd stayed loosely connected through social media, enough for me to know he specialized in domestic cases. The kind of cases I never thought I'd need help with. That evening, I prepared dinner alone, the kitchen radio filling the silence. A text from Ethan lit up my phone. Running late with Tess. Don't hold dinner. I picked up the note again, studying the precise loops of the C. Celeste, maybe? There was a Celeste at his marketing firm. Young, ambitious, the director's daughter. I'd met her at the holiday party last December, noticed how she touched Ethan's arm when she laughed at his jokes. The house phone rang, startling me. It was Ethan's mother. Lila, dear, I'm just confirming you're both coming to dinner Sunday? I'm making Ethan's favorite pot roast. Of course, I said, my voice steady despite the acid churning in my stomach. We wouldn't miss it. And how's my son? Working too hard as usual. I stared at the note on the counter. You know Ethan. Always giving everything his all. After hanging up, I pulled out my phone again and typed a message to Nolan. Need to discuss something confidential. Coffee tomorrow. His response came quickly. Usual place?
8 Uhr morgens.
I sent back a simple yes and deleted our exchange. Then I opened my calendar and moved my morning appointments, creating a window of time that didn't officially exist. Just like the note that didn't officially exist. Just like the growing space between Ethan and me that nobody else could see. Upstairs, I stood in our closet again, running my hands over Ethan's suits, wondering which one he'd worn when he wrote his response to C. Wondering how many other notes had passed between them, how many secrets were hidden in the pockets of our life together. Nolan hadn't changed much since high school. Same watchful eyes, same quiet intensity. He stirred his coffee methodically while I explained about the note, Ethan's late nights, and Tess's sudden devotion to her father. When did you first notice the changes? He asked, his voice neutral, professional. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Tessa, staying at Dad's office after school. He's teaching me about marketing stuff. Don't wait up. I showed Nolan the message. This is new. She used to hate visiting his office. Does she mention anyone specific at work? Besides Ethan? The question made me pause. She talked about meeting some of his colleagues last month. Said they were cool, not stuffy like she expected. My coffee had grown cold. She mentioned someone named Celeste. Nolan's expression didn't change, but he wrote something in his small notebook. I'll need a few days to look into things. Try to maintain your normal routine. Normal routine.
Right.
Like preparing dinner for 3 when only one would show up. Like pretending not to notice Ethan's fresh dry cleaning when he claimed to be working late. That evening, I heard Tessa before I saw her, her laughter floating up the driveway as Ethan's car pulled in. When they entered the kitchen, she was wearing a new leather jacket. Mom, look what Dad got me. She twirled, the jacket catching the light. Isn't it amazing? It's gorgeous, I said, noting how Ethan avoided my eyes. Special occasion? Just because, Ethan replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. She's been helping out at the office. Showing real talent for the business. Really? I kept my voice light. I thought you wanted to study art, Tess. Tess's expression hardened. People change, Mom. Maybe I want to do both. Both is good. Ethan jumped in, placing a hand on Tessa's shoulder. Actually, there's an industry event this weekend. I thought Tessa might come along, see how it all works. This weekend?
I set down the dish I was drying.
But it's your grandmother's birthday dinner.
Oh.
Tessa looked at Ethan. I forgot about that. We can do both, he said quickly. The event's in the afternoon. We'll make it to dinner. I watched them exchange glances, their silent communication excluding me completely. Who else will be at this event? Just colleagues, Ethan said. The usual crowd. Including Celeste? The name dropped like a stone between us. Tessa's shoulders tensed. Ethan's hand fell away from her. Among others, he said carefully.
Why?
Just curious about who's mentoring our daughter. Tessa yanked off the leather jacket. God, Mom, why do you have to make everything weird? It's just work stuff. You're not involved because you chose not to be involved. Tessa, Ethan started, but she was already storming upstairs. We stood in the kitchen, the silence heavy with unspoken accusations. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. I should go talk to her. Should you? I met his gaze. Or should you tell me what's really going on? For a moment, something flickered across his face. Guilt. Fear. I couldn't tell. Then his phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. He glanced at the screen, and I caught a glimpse of that same elegant handwriting I'd seen on the note. I need to take this, he muttered, already turning away. Work thing. I watched him retreat to his home office. Phone pressed to his ear, voice dropping to a whisper as soon as he thought I couldn't hear. Upstairs, Tessa's music started blasting. The same song she played in Ethan's car, the one she said I wouldn't understand. My phone lit up with a message from Nolan. Found something. Meet tomorrow? I typed back, yes, and deleted the message, just like I'd been deleting all our conversations. Just like Ethan had been deleting his. Nolan spread the photos across his desk like playing cards. Each one felt like a punch to the gut. Ethan and Celeste at a restaurant I'd never seen, their heads bent close together. Ethan helping Celeste into his car outside her apartment building at dawn. But the last photo made my hands shake, Tessa sitting between them at a cafe, all three laughing over something on Celeste's phone. When? My voice cracked. Last Tuesday. The day Tessa said she was studying at the library. Nolan's voice was gentle. There's more. He slid over a receipt from a jewelry store. The date matched the afternoon Ethan claimed he had a client meeting. The amount made me feel sick. The necklace went to Celeste's apartment, Nolan said. Delivered last week. My phone buzzed, Tessa asking if she could sleep at her friend Amy's house. I knew now that Amy probably had long dark hair and worked in marketing. They're careful, Nolan continued, but not careful enough. Celeste's father is pushing for Ethan to take over as creative director. The position opens next month. The pieces clicked together. Ethan's sudden interest in bringing Tessa to work, the mentoring sessions, the way he'd been positioning himself for promotion. He wasn't just having an affair. He was building a new family right under my nose. I need to go. I gathered the photos with trembling fingers. What do I owe you? Lila. Nolan caught my wrist. There's something else. Celeste is house hunting. 3-bedroom properties in our school district. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. 3 bedrooms. Room for Tessa. I drove home in a daze, the manila envelope of photos burning a hole in my passenger seat. The house was dark when I arrived, but Ethan's car was in the driveway. I found him in his home office, laptop glowing in the darkness. Working late? I asked from the doorway. He jumped slightly. Just finishing some proposals. I dropped the envelope on his desk. Here's a proposal for you. His face drained of color as he looked through the photos. When he reached the one of Tessa, his hands started shaking. I can explain, he began. Explain what? How you're grooming our daughter to accept your mistress. Or how you're using her to secure your promotion. That's not, he ran a hand through his hair. Celeste genuinely cares about Tessa. About both of us. Both of you. I laughed, a harsh sound I barely recognized. Is that why you're looking at houses together? Planning your new life while I'm still living this one. The front door opened downstairs. Tessa's footsteps on the stairs, then her voice. Dad, are you still up? I need to talk to you about. She froze in the doorway, taking in the scattered photos, my rigid posture, Ethan's pale face. Mom, her voice small, young. What's going on? Show her, Ethan. I gestured to the photos. Show her how you've been using her to play happy families with your girlfriend. Dad wouldn't. Tessa grabbed the nearest photo, then another. Her hands started shaking. This isn't. You said she was just mentoring me. Tess, honey. Ethan reached for her, but she backed away. You made me lie to Mom. Her voice cracked. All those times you said Mom wouldn't understand, that she was too controlling, too focused on her work to care about what we were doing. I never meant. Stop lying. I slammed my hand on his desk. For once in your life, just stop lying. The silence that followed was deafening. Tessa looked between us, tears streaming down her face, before turning and running to her room. The door slammed, and moments later, her music started blasting. Not the songs from Ethan's car this time, but the angry punk rock she used to play before all this started. The real estate agent's smile faltered when I walked into the open house. Maybe she recognized me, the soon-to-be ex-wife of the man who'd toured this same property with his girlfriend last week. I kept my face neutral, wandering through the rooms where Ethan and Celeste had probably already planned their future. My phone buzzed. Tessa. Where are you? Dad's freaking out. I ignored it, running my hand along the kitchen island. 3 bedrooms upstairs, the agent had said. Master suite, home office, and a room perfect for a teenager. They'd thought of everything. Another text. Mom, please. He says you emptied the joint account. I had. Every penny except what was legally required to maintain household expenses. The look on my bank manager's face when I'd explained the situation told me I wasn't the first woman to sit in that chair, planning her escape. The agent cleared her throat. There's another showing scheduled. Celeste Harmon, right? I watched her expression shift. Tell her the crown molding in the master bedroom is crooked, and the school district isn't what it used to be. Outside, I found Nolan waiting in his car. Did you get what you needed? I handed him the business card I'd picked up inside. Find out who else they're showing houses to. I want to know every property they visited. Lila. His voice was careful. Are you sure this is about protecting Tessa? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Ethan's mother. Lila, dear, what's happening? Ethan says you're not answering his calls, and Tessa's absolutely beside herself. Ask your son about the house he's buying with Celeste Harmon. My voice sounded distant, cold. Ask him about the necklace he bought her, or how he's been using Tessa to cover his tracks. Silence, then. Oh, Lila. I have to go. I hung up, watching another couple approach the house. Young, hopeful, untouched by betrayal. Drive, Nolan. At my office, I found Tessa waiting in the parking lot, her eyes red. You can't just disappear like that, like you disappeared to all those study sessions with Celeste? She flinched. That's different. Dad said. Your father says a lot of things. I unlocked the office door, letting us both in. Did he tell you about the house they're buying? The one with a room already picked out for you. He wouldn't. She stopped, remembering the photos. I didn't know about any house.
No.
I pulled up the listing on my phone, showed her the virtual tour. Maybe you can help them decorate. You 3 seem to make such a good team. Stop it. She knocked the phone from my hand. You're acting crazy. Dad messed up, okay? But you're making it worse. By protecting what's mine? By acting like I'm something to fight over. Her voice cracked. Did you ever think maybe I needed both of you? That maybe if you hadn't been so obsessed with your practice, Dad wouldn't have. She stopped, horror spreading across her face. I felt the accusation land like a slap. Mom, I didn't mean… Yes, you did. I picked up my phone, noting the cracked screen. Go home, Tessa. Your father's waiting. Where are you going to go? I thought about the apartment I'd viewed yesterday, the lease papers waiting in my bag. Somewhere I don't have to watch my daughter choose her father's lies over her mother's truth. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Through the window, I saw Ethan's car pulling into the lot. Of course, he'd followed her here. Of course, he wouldn't let me have even this conversation in peace. Mom, please. Go. I turned away, unable to watch her choose him again. Your father's here. The lease papers sat and signed on my new apartment's kitchen counter while I unpacked boxes labeled mine in angry black marker. Everything divided now. His life, my life, our daughter caught in between. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Ethan's lawyer and a text from Tessa. At least tell me where you are.
The doorbell rang.
Through the peephole, I saw Celeste Harmon, perfect makeup, perfect posture, perfect life wrecker. I opened the door. Wrong apartment?
Dr.
Mercer. She held up a manila envelope. We need to talk. No, we don't. I started to close the door, but she wedged her foot in the gap. It's about Tessa. She pushed the envelope through. And about the complaint you filed with the medical board. My hand froze on the doorknob. I hadn't filed any complaint. Inside the envelope were printouts of emails, dozens of them, sent to the state medical board, detailing allegations of prescription fraud at my practice. All supposedly from me. Ethan didn't send these, Celeste said quietly. But my father has friends on the board. They're taking it seriously. The room tilted slightly. My license, my practice, my entire professional identity, all balanced on the edge of destruction. What do you want? Stop investigating us. Stop fighting the house purchase. Let Tessa make her own choices. She straightened her designer blazer. The board meets next week. It would be shame if. Mom, we both turned. Tessa stood in the hallway, her face shifting from surprise to understanding to anger. What are you doing here? She stepped between us, facing Celeste. Did Dad send you? Tessa, honey. Don't. Tessa's voice cracked. Don't pretend you care about me. I saw the text on Dad's phone. About how I was your ticket to making this work. Celeste paled. Those messages weren't.
What?
Weren't meant for me to see? Like the emails you helped Dad draft about Mom's practice? Tessa pulled out her phone, fingers shaking. I forwarded everything to myself before I deleted them from his phone. Every single message where you two planned how to handle me and Mom. The hallway felt too small, too charged with unspoken threats and revealed secrets. Tessa, I touched her shoulder. How long have you known? Since the day you found the note. She wouldn't look at me. I saw Celeste plant it in Dad's jacket at the office. They wanted you to find it. Wanted you to look crazy when you accused them. Celeste took a step back. Your father loves you, Tessa. Everything we did was for you. Tessa's voice was ice. Get out. And tell Dad that if anything happens to Mom's practice, his precious promotion might get complicated. Grandpa Harmon might want to know exactly how his daughter landed such a prime position. After Celeste left, Tessa stood rigid, staring at the floor. I should have told you sooner. About everything. Why didn't you? Because. She finally met my eyes. I thought if I played along, kept their secrets, maybe it wouldn't be real. Maybe we could still be. She gestured helplessly at the half-unpacked boxes. But we can't, can we? I looked at the envelope of fraudulent complaints, thought of all the careful plans Ethan and Celeste had made to destroy what I'd built. No, I said, reaching for my phone. But we can build something new. I dialed Nolan's number, something they won't see coming. Tessa picked up one of the boxes marked mine and crossed out the word with her pen. Above it, she wrote OURS. What's the plan? She asked. I thought about everything they'd tried to take from us. My practice, my daughter, my dignity. First, I said, we're going to need those texts you saved. The medical board hearing room felt colder than it should in June. I sat straight-backed in my chair while Dr. Harrison, the board chairman, reviewed the complaint documents. Beside me, my lawyer shifted nervously, eyeing the empty seats where Ethan and Celeste should have been.
Dr.
Mercer, Harrison began, these are serious allegations. Prescription fraud. The door burst open. Celeste rushed in. Mascara streaked down her face.
Wait.
I need to. MS.
Harmon.
Harrison frowned. This is a closed hearing. The complaints are fake. She dropped a USB drive on the table. I helped create them. All the evidence is here. My lawyer reached for the drive, but I stopped him. Something wasn't right. This felt too easy, too convenient. Why? Asked her. Celeste's lips trembled. Because Ethan promised he'd leave you if I did this. Said once your practice was gone, you'd have no choice but to accept the divorce terms. She wiped her eyes. But he lied. He's been lying to everyone. The board members exchanged glances. Harrison picked up the drive. We'll need to verify. My phone buzzed. A text from Nolan. Don't trust her. Check your email now. Under the table, I opened my email. Photos appeared, Celeste leaving Ethan's office an hour ago, both of them smiling. The timestamp showed 9:47 a.m. Her mascara perfectly intact.
Dr.
Harrison. I stood up. Before you review that drive, you should know it's part of a larger scheme. Celeste's face hardened. What are you talking about? The drive probably contains evidence of actual fraud committed at my practice over the last month. Evidence you and Ethan planted while using my login credentials. I pulled out my own USB drive. But you didn't know about the hidden cameras Nolan installed 3 weeks ago. The color drained from Celeste's face. Or about the keylogger that recorded every false entry you made in my system. I handed the drive to Harrison. Or about Tessa photographing you breaking into my office after hours. Tessa would never. Already did. Tessa's voice came from the doorway. She held up her phone, playing a video of Celeste entering my office at night. Dad's not the only one who knows how to keep evidence. Celeste lunged for the phone. In the chaos that followed, I watched my daughter, my fierce, brilliant daughter, stand her ground as security led Celeste away. But our victory was short-lived. My phone buzzed again. Ethan had emptied our remaining joint accounts. The house was already in escrow, sold well below market value to a mysterious LLC. He'd scorched the earth behind him, ensuring that even if I kept my practice, I'd be fighting financial fires for years. Mom, Tessa touched my arm. What's wrong? I showed her the bank notifications. Your father's been planning this for months. The medical board complaint was just a distraction while he liquidated everything. But we stopped Celeste. We proved they tried to destroy my practice. I sank back into my chair, the weight of reality settling in. But they've still won. The money's gone. The house is gone. Your college fund. Tessa's face crumpled. He wouldn't, but he had. In trying to save my practice, I'd left our finances vulnerable. Now we had nothing but an apartment full of boxes and a business hanging by a thread.
Dr.
Mercer. Harrison's voice cut through my despair. Given this evidence, the board will dismiss the complaints. But there's something else you should see. He slid a document across the table, a familiar letterhead. Celeste's father's company. This arrived this morning. A formal investigation into certain financial irregularities. He met my eyes. It seems someone has been tracking every penny your husband moved, every account, every transfer, and they've been sending it all to the SEC. I looked at Tessa, but she shook her head, equally confused. Then my phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. Karma's best served by professionals.
And
the SEC investigation made headlines by morning. I watched from my apartment as news vans gathered outside Harmon Marketing Group, where Ethan had been scheduled to accept his promotion. Instead, federal agents led him and Celeste's father out in handcuffs. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ethan. No handcuffs, but his designer suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. 5 minutes, I said through the door. That's all you get. He looked smaller somehow, standing in my living room. You did this.
no.
I gestured to the boxes Tessa and I were still unpacking. You did this. Every choice, every lie, every manipulation brought you here. They're freezing all the accounts. His voice cracked. Everything we built. Everything you destroyed. Tessa emerged from her room, clutching her phone. They just posted the whole investigation online. The fake companies, the embezzlement. You used my college fund to pay for your affair. Ethan reached for her. Princess, I can explain. Don't. She backed away. I saw the texts about the house, about how you and Celeste planned to use me to hurt Mom. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love either of us? Of course, he stopped, seeing something in her expression. What else do you know? Everything. I pulled out my own phone, showing him Nolan's final report, including what really happened to your first wife's inheritance. The one that mysteriously disappeared right before you met me. The color drained from his face. You can't prove. The SEC already has. Nolan's been building this case for weeks. Every transaction, every shell company, every victim. I stepped closer. Did you really think I'd let you destroy another family? I'll lose everything. His voice was barely a whisper. Now you know how it feels. Tessa's words cut through the air. But Mom and we're done losing. My phone buzzed. Nolan, warning that reporters were heading to my apartment. Ethan saw the message, and something in him broke.
Please, he begged.
I'll sign whatever you want.
Give you whatever's left.
Just don't let them. You mean like you were going to give me whatever was left after you and Celeste destroyed my practice? The words tasted like victory, but somehow hollow. The reporters will be here soon. You might want to use the back exit. He turned to Tessa one last time. Baby, please. Goodbye, Dad. She walked to her room, closing the door softly behind her. I watched him leave, this man I'd once loved, now reduced to skulking through back alleys to avoid cameras. Part of me had imagined this moment would feel triumphant. Instead, I felt empty until I heard Tessa crying. I found her sitting on her bed, surrounded by old family photos. He really never loved us, did he? No, honey. I sat beside her, picking up a photo from her 5th birthday. He loved the idea of us. The perfect wife, the adoring daughter. We were props in his performance. But we're not props anymore. She wiped her eyes, straightening her shoulders. We're protagonists. Through the window, we could hear the reporters arriving, their questions echoing up from the street. But they weren't looking for us. We weren't the story anymore. Mom, Tessa gathered the photos, dropping them in the trash. Can we paint my room? I'm thinking blue. I smiled, remembering how Ethan had always insisted on beige, claiming it photographed better for family portraits. Blue sounds perfect. My phone buzzed again. Not Nolan this time, but my lawyer. The SEC wanted to discuss recovering our assets. Starting over, properly this time. Ready to rebuild? I asked Tessa. She linked her arm through mine. Already started. 6 months later, I stood in my newly expanded dermatology practice, watching Tessa hang her first art show in our waiting room. Her photographs captured moments of transformation, a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, a sunrise over our apartment building, a broken mirror reflecting infinite possibilities.
The bell chimed.
Celeste stood in the doorway, thinner now, designer clothes replaced by something simpler. She carried a thick envelope. Your restitution payment. She placed it on the counter. The court approved my testimony against Ethan and father. This is your share. Tessa tensed beside me, but I touched her arm. Thank you. I'm leaving the country, Celeste continued. But I wanted you to know I never meant for it to go so far. Ethan had a way of making everything seem justified. He still does. I gestured to yesterday's newspaper, where Ethan's prison interview painted him as a victim of circumstance. Some people never change, but some do. She looked at Tessa's photos. These are beautiful. They're not for sale. Tessa's voice was firm but not unkind. Not to you. Celeste nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. She turned to leave, then stopped. The house, the one we were going to buy. It's back on the market. After she left, Tessa grabbed her keys. Come on. Where are we going? To look at a house.
She grinned.
One with good bones and bad memories. Perfect for a renovation. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The real estate agent walked us through rooms once filled with Ethan and Celeste's dreams, now empty and waiting. The previous sale fell through, she explained. Something about fraudulent funds. But it's a steal at this price. Tessa wandered upstairs while I stood in the kitchen, remembering how I'd once imagined Celeste here, playing happy families with my husband and daughter. Now I imagine something different. Holiday dinners with Tessa and her future college friends, a home office for my practice's expansion, walls filled with her photography. Mom, Tessa called from upstairs. Come see this. I found her in what would have been her room in Ethan's version of events. She'd open the window, letting in fresh air and light. On the windowsill sat a small origami crane, one of dozens she'd been folding since the trial, a paper chain of healing. It's perfect, she said. Not because of what almost happened here, but because of what could happen now. My phone buzzed, Nolan, checking if we needed him to run background checks on the seller. Always protecting us, even now. I replied with a simple thank you for everything he'd done and everything he'd helped us become. Should we make an offer?
Tessa asked.
I looked around the room, seeing not what was lost but what could be built. On one condition. That blue paint you wanted for your room? Let's use it everywhere. That evening, as we celebrated with takeout in our apartment, Tessa handed me an envelope. Inside was a photograph I hadn't seen, one she'd taken the day we found Ethan's note. In it, I stood in my closet, surrounded by his suits, looking lost. Below it was a more recent shot, me in my practice, surrounded by Tessa's art, smiling at a patient. Before and after, she said softly. Like your patients, but different. Different how? Their transformations are on the outside. She took my hand. Ours is deeper. Through the window, I could see the city lights flickering like stars. Somewhere out there, Ethan sat in his cell, probably still plotting his next performance. But his audience had moved on to better stories, ones we were writing ourselves, one day at a time. Mom, Tessa squeezed my hand. I'm glad we chose us. Me too, honey. I squeezed back. Me too.